Hi, my name's Rachel Myers. I'm 34, and I've been married to my husband Caleb for almost 9 years. We live in a suburb just outside Orlando, Florida. Nice house, decent schools, quiet neighbors. On the surface, everything looks like a postcard. But for the past few years, I felt like I'm disappearing inside that picture. Like someone faded me out with a cheap editing tool and forgot to bring me back. I used to be an architect. I had a good job, projects I was proud of, and a life I built piece by piece. But 5 years ago, my mother-in-law had a stroke. Caleb's sister lived across the country and couldn't help. And Caleb, well, he made it clear he didn't have the bandwidth between work and growing the family business. So I stepped back, gave up my job, took care of his mother full-time while also raising our 3-year-old son. No one clapped. No one noticed. And over time, even Caleb stopped pretending to appreciate it. At first, he'd say things like, "You're a rock, Rach. I couldn't do this without you." Then it became, "I need you to keep the house calm. I've got enough pressure at work." And lately, it's more like, "You wouldn't get it. You don't work." The last time he said that, we were in the middle of a dinner I'd cooked from scratch after spending the entire day scrubbing mildew off the back patio. He didn't even look up from his phone, just muttered it like a reflex. I wanted to scream, but instead I swallowed it, like I always do. That was 3 weeks ago, and since then something's felt off. He started coming home later, always smelled like cologne that wasn't his, kept forgetting to bring his work laptop home, until I found his old one in the garage last Thursday while looking for the stepladder. It was dusty, locked with the same password he used in college. Now, before you say it, yes, I know opening someone's laptop is invasive, but my gut had been screaming for weeks. And when you've been gaslit for as long as I have, your gut is all you've got. The moment I opened his browser, it jumped straight to an email thread titled Separation Strategy. It was with a lawyer. Not one we know. Not even someone local. He'd been discussing how to slowly transfer assets from our joint accounts into a business account under a new LLC, one registered under his cousin's name. I felt the blood leave my face. I kept reading. He'd already started the process 2 months ago, but what broke me wasn't the money. It was this line. "She doesn't contribute financially." Judges usually lean in our favor when they see that. I stared at that sentence for what felt like hours. I'd given up everything to take care of his dying mother, our child, and the entire household. I hadn't taken a vacation in 5 years. I hadn't bought new clothes in 2. But to him, I was just a liability. I closed the laptop, took a shower I couldn't feel, made dinner, said nothing, until last night. We were at his parents' house for a casual Sunday dinner. Caleb was in the backyard, taking a call on speaker. He didn't know I was walking past the open window. His voice was low, rushed. He laughed and said, "Don't worry. She doesn't even know I've started the process. She thinks everything's fine." I froze. Process? The next word stopped my breath cold. "Once the Coral Gables property is clear, I'll move everything under Mike's name. She won't see a dime." The Coral Gables property is the new showroom he opened last year. He bought it with funds from selling our first house, one we co-owned. The house I sold my retirement stock for. My fingers clenched the edge of the window frame. I nearly shattered the glass. So now I'm sitting here in our bedroom typing this and wondering how many other women have been erased just like this. I don't know what I'm going to do next. But I do know one thing. He has no idea that I still have every receipt from that house sale. And I'm going to make damn sure he learns what a liability is. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared. I wasn't. Not yet. I was angry. Angry in a way I didn't know I could be. It was the kind of rage that sits in your chest like wet cement. Too heavy to move, too hard to ignore. The Coral Gables showroom. That was our dream, not just his. When we sold the first house, I was the one who gave up my Roth IRA to bridge the last funding gap. I remember the exact email from our broker. Your retirement portfolio will take a hit, but if this business succeeds, you'll make it back 5 times over. I believed him. I believed us. But here we are. Caleb is planning to put the entire showroom under his cousin Mike's name and call it a corporate expansion, which, according to his lawyer, can't be touched in a divorce if it's clearly separate from community assets. Except, it wasn't separate. It was built on everything I gave up. I didn't tell him what I heard. Not yet. I needed to be smarter than that. So the next morning, while Caleb left for work pretending to be the same boring husband he's been for years, I made coffee, packed lunch for our son, and smiled like nothing was wrong. And then I dug. I went back to that old laptop and pulled everything I could. Emails, spreadsheets, bank statements. It was all there, tucked in a temp projects folder. I copied every file onto a flash drive and emailed it to myself. Twice. Then I opened my old fireproof lockbox, the one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were the closing documents from the house we sold. Guess whose name is on the wire transfer? Mine. Every dollar went from my investment account to the escrow company because Caleb's credit history had too many flags at the time. He didn't even qualify. But I did. I don't know whether to cry or laugh. Honestly, maybe both. I took everything to my friend Lacey. She's a civil litigation attorney I used to work with before I left my job. I hadn't seen her in 2 years. The moment she opened the folder and saw the documents, she looked at me and just said, "Rachel, does he know you have all this?" I shook my head. He doesn't even know I remember where it came from. She paused for a second, then leaned back in her chair. Okay, then you're not just part of this asset. You are the asset. That hit me harder than I thought it would. For 5 years, I've been told I was a burden, that I didn't contribute, that everything I did was soft work. But here I was, sitting on legal proof that I built the foundation of the thing he's trying to steal. Lacey started typing notes. That's when I got a text from Caleb. "Can you send me the HOA logins? I'm meeting the realtor later." HOA logins? I thought he said nothing was changing. I didn't answer. I stared at the message for a solid minute before my fingers moved. Sure. Also, we should talk soon. About Coral Gables. No response. 5 hours later, he walked into the house looking like he'd swallowed a porcupine. I was making dinner. "Hey," he said casually, like nothing had happened. "Hey," I answered, flipping the pan. "Did you get everything done today?" He nodded. "Just busy. Long day. You know how it is." I smiled. "Must be tough running a business." "Yeah," he said, rubbing his neck. "A lot on my plate." He had no clue. After dinner, while he showered, I emailed a zipped file of everything, every bank doc, every screenshot, every transfer to Lacey's private inbox. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I logged into our shared bank account and opened the tab for recent transactions. Right there, tucked between grocery runs and gas payments, was a $2,800 charge to the Sable Agency, a high-end PR firm. I clicked through. Guess what I found? A pitch deck Caleb was preparing, introducing himself as a solo founder and independent entrepreneur who built from the ground up. He'd booked a podcast interview, had professional headshots taken, was launching a public campaign around Caleb Myers' The Self-Made Story. He was literally erasing me, in real time. I closed the tab, and for the first time in months, I wasn't sad. I was ready. Because I realized something Caleb hasn't yet. I might have disappeared in his story, but I'm about to become the twist ending in his. It's weird how fast you can go from heartbreak to war mode. 1 minute, I was crying over a man who used to kiss my forehead when I had the flu. The next, I was watching him carefully, like a stranger in my house who might steal the silverware. Caleb still had no idea I knew. He still called me babe out of habit, still made his bad coffee and left the spoon in the sink like always. But I could feel the shift. The silences were longer. He didn't touch me, barely looked at me. I think he thought he'd already won. Like he was just easing me into the idea that I was optional, replaceable. I kept playing the game. But every word he said started to sound like static. That Friday, he left early for a vendor meeting, so I called Lacey and asked if she had time for lunch. We met at this cafe we used to hit after client meetings back when I still had a job and a nameplate and a desk with drawers full of ambition. I brought the pitch deck Caleb made for that podcast interview. Lacey scrolled through it, pausing at one slide with his photo in front of the Coral Gables showroom. It said, "Built by grit, not gifts." She scoffed. "That's bold, considering you literally paid for the concrete." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't want to cry in public. That's when she leaned in and said something that chilled me. "You know, if he's trying to make this public, maybe you should too." I didn't say anything. I just nodded slowly. Later that night, I opened my private Instagram for the first time in months. It only had about 200 followers, mostly old colleagues, college friends, a few moms from our son's school. I uploaded a picture from 5 years ago. Me and Caleb standing in front of the old house we sold. I was holding the SOLD sign. He had his arm around me. Caption: "Funny how I sold my future to build yours, but I kept the receipts." I didn't tag him. Didn't have to. By morning, I had 30 DMs. By noon, 3 people had texted me. "Is this about Caleb? What happened? Girl, spill but the one that made my stomach flip?" A message from someone named Jenna S. No profile picture. 2 followers. It just said, "I'm the girl he met in Tampa. I didn't know he was married." I dropped my phone. My hands were shaking. I called Lacey immediately. "He's cheating. Not just planning a financial hit job, he's cheating." She was silent for a second. Then, "Rachel, do you still have the prenup?" I did. I hadn't thought about it in years, but I remembered that weird clause Caleb insisted on. Something about infidelity voiding business ownership protections. I thought it was just legal gibberish. Turns out it wasn't. If I could prove he cheated, I wasn't just entitled to part of the business. I could claim half of everything. I sat on the floor of our walk-in closet, just staring at my wedding ring. My brain was buzzing, my heart thudding like it wanted out of my chest. How do you even grieve someone who's still breathing next to you? I went downstairs and found him in the kitchen, texting. He looked up and smiled. "You okay?" he asked, like he hadn't just detonated my life behind my back. I smiled back. "Yeah," I said. "Actually, I think I'm finally starting to feel like myself again." He had no idea what was coming, but I did. And if you've ever been in a place where someone erased your worth, where they made you feel like a burden in your own home, I just want you to know, you are not the crazy one. You're not too emotional. You're not overreacting. You're just finally seeing things clearly. And trust me, once that switch flips, there's no going back. He still doesn't know I'm the one pulling the thread. Caleb walks through the house like nothing's wrong, makes his protein shakes, scrolls through Zillow listings like he's shopping for a second life, and drops lines like, "We need to keep this mature for our son's sake." Meanwhile, I'm sitting on a goldmine of evidence, a prenup clause that's about to eat him alive, and the quiet satisfaction of watching the first cracks form in his carefully curated image. I hadn't told him I'd lawyered up, that I had Lacey, that she was already preparing the draft motion. I let him stew in his ego a little longer. But you know what finally set the whole thing off? Not the cheating, not the money moves. It was the damn podcast. He posted it himself, the full interview, titled, "Building Legacy from Scratch, the Caleb Myers Story." 32 minutes of him talking about resilience, sacrifice, and climbing from nothing with no help. At minute 17, he said, "My wife's great with our son, but she never really understood what it means to build something. She preferred to stay in the domestic lane, and I respected that. But this is my blood." I watched it twice. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because I could. He wanted people to see me as someone who coasted, someone who stood on the sidelines clapping while he built his empire. So I let it sit for a day. Then I sent a short email to a business columnist I knew from back when I worked in architecture. The subject line was simple: one correction to Caleb Myers' solo founder narrative. Attached were the bank receipts, house sale documents, photos of the early planning sketches, some of them literally in my handwriting. 3 days later, the article dropped. Title: Behind Every Self-Made Man is a Woman Who Signed the Check. It was scathing, factual, and just polite enough to be dangerous. It never said the word cheating. It didn't have to. It said things like, sources close to the couple allege the Coral Gables showroom was co-financed using funds from a property co-owned by Mrs. Myers. By noon, Caleb's phone was blowing up. I could hear him pacing the office, shouting, "It's a smear job. I'm the one who put in the hours." "Sure, babe. You also put in a whole other woman." By the end of the week, 2 corporate partners pulled out of a regional expansion. Our realtor froze the listing on the new house, pending clarification of joint ownership. And Mike, the cousin, texted Caleb, "You said this wouldn't get messy. I'm out." The cracks were now holes, and still I hadn't said a word to Caleb about what I'd done. That changed on Saturday. We were sitting at opposite ends of the couch while our son watched a movie. Caleb was scrolling his phone, muttering under his breath. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might chip a tooth. I waited until our son was upstairs. Then I stood in front of the TV, crossed my arms, and said, "So, want to talk about Coral Gables now?" He looked up, his face drained. "You. It was you." I didn't blink. "Who else would it be?" He tried to recover. "This is a mistake, Rach. We can undo this." "You mean I can undo it? Just like I apparently never understood what it meant to build something, right?" He ran his hands through his hair. Okay. Look, maybe I took the credit too far, but the business is in my name. I am the founder." I smiled, then pulled a manila envelope from under the coffee table and dropped it on his lap. Inside, a copy of the LLC paperwork I had quietly filed 4 years ago when we first bought the Coral Gables lot, before he changed the registration. Back then, he told me it was just a precaution, that I should be listed as a co-owner in case anything ever happened to him. I had forgotten all about it, until I went through the old files last week and found the original submission, signed by both of us, witnessed, dated, still legally binding. Caleb looked at the paper like it was a grenade. "I own half," I said, on paper, on record, and in court. He didn't say a word, just sat there, stunned. You know that moment when someone realizes they're not the smartest person in the room anymore? Yeah, that. And if you've ever felt powerless, like someone built their whole kingdom while convincing you your name didn't matter, just know this: the quiet ones? We're not weak. We're just patient. The morning of the final hearing, I didn't wear black. I wore red, not a power move. Just a quiet reminder, to myself more than anyone, that I was done blending into the background of someone else's life. Caleb arrived late. Of course. Wrinkled shirt, no tie, face pale like he hadn't slept in days. He used to enter rooms like he owned the oxygen. Now he looked like he was holding his breath just to stay upright. I didn't look at him. Didn't need to. My lawyer presented everything. The prenup clause, the infidelity proof, the co-ownership documents. It was clean. I didn't even have to speak. Caleb tried. His lawyer, who looked like he'd aged 10 years since we first exchanged documents, argued intent and oversight and some half-baked narrative about me being emotionally unstable. It didn't land. The judge wasn't buying it, especially after the press coverage and the clear-as-day paper trail. In the end, the court ordered what we expected. I got half the business. Officially, publicly. The Coral Gables showroom was valued at just under $3.2 million. He had 2 options: either run it jointly with me or buy me out within 12 months. He didn't even try to argue. I walked out of the courthouse to sunlight I swear felt different on my skin. Lacey met me on the sidewalk and handed me a small envelope. "You're gonna want to see this," she said. Inside was a letter from one of Caleb's old investors, a woman named Renee. We'd met once, briefly, at a fundraiser. Turns out Renee had read the article, listened to the podcast, seen the contradiction. In the letter, she explained she was pulling her investment, not just because of the scandal, but because watching a man erase the person who helped him rise is the clearest sign he doesn't deserve to stay at the top. That hit me harder than any verdict, because it was never about money. It was about being seen. A week later, I sold my half of the showroom to a third-party buyer. Got a good price. Clean, fair, quiet. Used part of the money to launch a design consultancy with Lacey and 2 other women I used to work with. We named it Foundations. A little nod to what people forget matters most. I moved with my son to Austin. Bought a small but bright house near Zilker Park. We bike on weekends. I cook again. For me this time. Caleb? Last I heard, he's struggling to keep the business afloat. Lost 2 more contracts. Apparently, the girlfriend left when the cash flow dried up. Go figure. He called once, left a voicemail I didn't bother to listen to. Closure doesn't need conversation. It just needs clarity. And I finally had it. I used to think I wasn't valuable because my work wasn't on a paycheck. Now I know I was the thing holding the whole damn structure up. And when I walked away, the rest of it crumbled exactly like it should have. He didn't lose me the moment he lied. He lost me the moment he mistook my silence for weakness. Lesson I learned, sometimes the quiet ones are just watching. And when we finally move, it's already too late for the people who thought we never would. If you've ever been through something like this, where you gave your all only to be treated like a footnote, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if you're still in the middle of it, stay. You'll know when it's time to walk. You'll know.